The beautiful and mysterious Mingli Zhao, Special Inspector from Scotland Yard, enlists the help of Leopold Kazsmer, the Great Enchanter, who uses his skill with summoning Jewish demons to perform true magic to help solve supernatural crimes. Meanwhile, the Hungarian Romanian part man, part clockwork, will stop at nothing to kill the man he believes is responsible for his hell of an existence that is slowly grinding his mind into the nothingness of gears and pistons. It's a race against time for Leopold to foil the fiendish plots of the railway barons, fight off a plutocratic society of goblins, struggle to gain the romantic attentions of Miss Zhao, and discover the identity of the Clockwork Gypsy before he kills again. Clockwork Gypsy, Enchanter Chronicles, Book 2, written by Jerry Westerson and narrated by Noah James Butler. Alright, so we are back, and we are working on Book 2 of the Enchanter Chronicles, written by Jerry Westerson. This is only, like I said, Book 2 of the series. There's one more, which I might release by the end of January or beginning of February. I haven't really decided yet. I got some other projects that I'm putting in front of the final book. And let's just jump right into the review then. So, starting with the cover and title. I'm going to give this one, I really wanted to give this one 4 stars, but I already gave the previous book discounted marks for kind of the same things that I would pick apart here. So, since I did that in the very first one, let's just say this one's going to get 5 stars. First off, there is definitely an improvement in the title of the book itself, The Clockwork Gypsy. I think while the demon device was fine, and I didn't really have a problem with it because that came into play in the book, I think Clockwork Gypsy does fit the title better in the sequel. Now, the image of the person on the cover, again, me, as well as a bunch of other people that I've researched, are not huge fans of people on the covers. But the person specifically on this cover is not the type of person I envision as the Clockwork Man. Or the Clockwork Gypsy, I should say. Whenever the story was being told, I was thinking of, like, the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. You know, someone big and metal. But instead of being made like the Tin Man was, he would look more robotic, like C-3PO, but with gears actually showing. So, you know, that was just my mental image of the character. You know, there's the one on the cover doesn't really strike me as, you know, very mechanical. And I don't know if that's supposed to be that character or if it's supposed to be a different character. Also, again, with the top hat, I don't really recall the main character ever wearing or owning a top hat. I don't even think he uses a top hat. So the addition of another top hat just kind of threw me off a little bit. Looking back at the first, even in that one, he has a top hat in the picture, but in the book, I don't really recall there being a top hat. So, like I said, these are all things, though, that I kind of nitpicked on in the first one. And since I've already deducted marks, this falls in line with the same thing. And honestly, between the two, I think this one had the better picture and the better title. So that's why this one gets, like I said, 5 stars. Could it be improved upon? Anything can always be improved upon. If the author were to ever make a hardback copy, because there currently is no hardback, at least not on Amazon, I think, as I've said in the previous one too, that maybe she could go for something the same or something similar, very similar to this, but make the cover look more like a tarot card. And it could have symbols, and stuff related to the story that would fit better with the theme. And that's just my personal opinion on the matter. I do really like the font choice for the title. So, yeah, like I said, definitely an improvement over the previous. And I will be definitely looking forward to seeing how the third one comes out. Moving on to the writing. Once again, the writing was perfect. And something I really noticed, because I was really listening for it in this one, I recently have been listening to a lot more audiobooks than I'm normally listening to. And one thing I've noticed is there's so many writers that keep putting in this certain thing in their books. I'm not entirely sure what we call it, but it's those moments in a story where you always have to compare something. It's always a comparison. Maybe that's what it is, a comparison. But they always got to compare. Or try to get you to relate to something. Give it a relation. When they say, like, oh, that character's hair was as black as the dark night sky. It's like, if you just said the character's hair was silky black, I'd get the same image. And that's what I really want to say really stands out about Jerry, is her work. As far as I was able to tell, she didn't have to keep relating it. She didn't have to keep comparing it. So for writing, I'm going to give her 5 stars in this book. The story was, in my opinion, well, we'll get to that. But her writing expanded. And she didn't have to relate to every little object. She didn't have to keep comparing everything that was going on. And I really liked that. It was a breath of fresh air not to hear all these comparisons, not to hear all these relations to other things. Granted, sometimes you need it. Sometimes it works. But when it's done too much, it kind of stands out. And I can't even think of a single time in the book she did that. So I really enjoyed that. I think it shows more of, she's letting her words do the talking, not telling you, think of what I want you to think of. So, once again, writing, definitely in this one, as we get deeper into this review, you'll come to see why I say her writing gets 5 stars. Now, on to narration. And for narration, once again, straight out the gate, I'm going to give it another 5 stars. Because the narration, once again, was perfect. And I don't know if the BBC, I believe she's in England, but this needs to be turned into some kind of TV series, not a movie. Please, they cannot make this a movie. And the reason I say that is because if this were turned into a movie, this would be butchered. But as a TV series, each season could be one book, which they would get 3 seasons out of, and they can follow it to the letter. And I think that the narrator should be casted to voice all the, non-human characters. Because this narrator, once again, was spectacular at voicing the characters. Like I said, there's an imp who sometimes he sounds like Smeagol. Sometimes he sounds like Dobby. Sometimes, I swear, he sounded like Bobby from Bobby's World. And all his other characters. Perfect accents. Perfect vocal technique. And as he read the story, I stayed engaged. You could hear the suspense when something suspenseful is going on. Once again, he's a perfect narrator. But I gush over him enough. Really want to work with this guy sometime. Moving into the story now. I have to give this section another 5 stars here. Now, granted, the way it's represented is it's trying really hard to be steampunk. But this is not the material I think of when I think of steampunk. When I think of steampunk or anything in that line, I think of something like The City of Lost Children, I believe it's called. Or I think of the one with the cities that were on like vehicles. I don't remember what that was called. But something along that line. Something that's like a old-timey version of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk without the high-tech, it's still tech, but it's not high-tech. There's no internet. There's no jacking in. Maybe there's drugs. I don't know. But, when people have, instead of cybernetic implants, they have, entire limbs made out of gears. And yes, this had this, Clockwork Gypsy, who's like kind of the main focus of this. But other than that, the only other thing in here is a train. Now, why did I give this 5 stars then? What, if it's not steampunk, what is it then? Well, for me, it was, one of my favorite genres. The genre I actually review the most, because that's what I keep getting, is fantasy. And honestly, I have to say, this series went from being a esoteric, eldritch kind of Sherlock Holmes type deal. Well, it still had some of that carried over from the previous book. This one dives more into fantasy with mythical creatures. I mean, if you heard my intro, you heard that there's goblins. So there's obviously more than that. But I don't want to spoil everything. If you want to know what, definitely check out the book. But it dives into a more magical world, which to me, is something I can relate to, being such a fan of fantasy. I mean, it's kind of the rule of thumb, I guess, for writers. When I wrote The Guardian of Light, I isolated most of the book to the North Pole. Then in the sequel, I went back to certain locations from the previous, and I expanded on that. And I started expanding on the world. Not much, just a little. Shane goes back home. He goes and spends time with his friend back home. Then they go on a quest to go find Merlin. And they got to travel to England. Yeah, they go back to the North Pole after that, but, I bring in England. I bring in other locations for the villain to travel to. I expand the world. And that, to me, is what this book did. It expanded the world. Now, in the next one, honestly, I'm expecting that the world's going to get even bigger. Or we're going to get a completely, entirely new setting. Which is something else I did in book 3. I took you away from the familiar location and set you on a journey. Which is why my third book is a completely adventurous type series. It's an adventurous book. Because I wanted each book to kind of have a different feel. So, I'm either expecting that the third book is going to be huge and massive and take place in multiple locations, really exploring the world, or take us on a magic journey that's going to blow our minds. But we'll find out when we get there. But as for this book, I honestly have to say, it expanded the world. We got to see more of it. We got to learn about more of it. And that, to me, was the perfect way to do the story. You also had, every character. Well, we'll save that for the next section. But, everything was just better. And yes, it dived into the fantasy more than it dived into the steampunk. But that was fine by me, because I'm more familiar with fantasy. And I could easily relate to all that fantastical stuff that was in there. And it still held that esoteric, eldritch type feel. And it clashed the two together in a perfect blend. While still feeling like some kind of mystery like Sherlock Holmes. I could have used a little more mystery. But we were more focused on the fantasy element, I think, in this book. So, like I said, for story, it gets 5 stars. Now, moving into the characters. And for characters, I'm also going to give it 5 stars. Because every character, every single one, was expanded upon. There were certain things that I thought were going to go, like, there's a secret that one character has to tell another. And although he says it wasn't really right time, I kept saying, well, tell her now, tell her now, tell her now. And it's like, at one point when it was definitely perfect, I'm like, okay, you better tell her now, or this is going to take a dive, because you got the perfect chance right here. And he did tell her. And then she was about to, freak out. And he actually says, look, this is the only time I had to tell you, and explains why he only can tell her now. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And I'm glad she didn't harp on it, A lot of times, writers will make, oh, well, you didn't tell me right away, so I'm going to be mad at you until, Act 3, and then we're going to get over it suddenly. No, she gets over it pretty quick, so it's like, oh, that's good, we didn't harp on it, we just got over it, she understood, dealt with it, and I was so glad of that. There was no cliches that were driven home. So I was really happy that the characters behaved in such a way. It's like, okay, we could do this without overdoing it. And if you actually read the book, you'll understand. So that's why, for characters, I have to give it 5 stars, because everything was improved upon. Now moving into extras. And for the extras, we really don't have anything. This book was made on, like I said, the same level as the previous book. I mean, things that stay the same because it's part of a series. And everything that could have been expanded or improved upon was expanded or improved upon. So let's just move right in then to the final verdict. And with every category getting 5 stars, I think it's pretty crystal clear to say that this book gets a 10 out of 10. I mean, you need book 1 to set this book up. So it's not like you can really come into this book without having to get through the first book. But so far, this book was better, in my opinion, than the previous book. And I have not started book 3 yet. I probably will at the beginning of January. So like I said at the beginning, I might be putting that out at the end of January or the beginning of February, because I got a lot of projects and I only upload on Mondays. Now, I either upload at 7 a.m. or at 3 p.m. It really depends on what I'm putting up, if I have it ready, and when I want to put it out. I honestly want to get these videos out to you guys early in the day so you have all day to watch it. I'm not sure yet what my best time of release is, because when I release it, that's when YouTube's going to push it. So if you have a preferred time, just tell me in the comments, morning, afternoon, or evening. And I will try to put them out around that time. Or maybe I'll switch it up. One video, 1 week will go in the morning, one video the next week will go in the afternoon, and then so on and so forth. But I only upload on Mondays. Every Monday, I try to stay consistent and get a video out to you. Once in a blue moon, I put out a bonus video. Depends what I have going on, or if there's a holiday. I try to hit most holidays. So, like I said, this book gets a 10 out of 10. I'm really looking forward to the third book. I have it downloaded. I just need to finish my current project. Then I can jump into that audiobook. And I can have it out for you, like I said, by the end of next month, hopefully. If you have not yet, please do check out this book, The Clockwork Gypsy, by Jerry Westerson. And if you haven't, also make sure to check out the previous book too. Like I said, you can't really jump into this one unless you've read or listened to the previous one. All of her links will be down in the description below. If you want to visit her website, she also has a YouTube channel. Yeah. And also down there, you will see links to my book series, The Guardian of Light. If you enjoy fantasy, if you are looking for something for the holidays that will blow you away, please do feel free to check out my book series. I want to thank you all for watching. If you have not, please subscribe to this channel. Make sure to click that notification bell. And I want to wish you all a happy holidays, as Christmas is right around the corner. And audiobooks make the best, quickest gifts for the reader in your life. I'm not being sponsored by anybody, so I won't mention any company names, but yeah, I think everybody knows where to go for audiobooks. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.